The kindest person you know is angry. Not a little, not occasionally, deeply, quietly, dangerously angry. They just don't know it yet. And neither do you, if this is you. There is a rule in psychology that almost no one tells you. The more aggressively you perform goodness, the more fury you are burying alive. Carl Jung saw it in his patients. He saw it in himself. He called what you are hiding your shadow. And he said this: the brighter the persona, the darker the shadow. That is not a metaphor, it is a mechanism, and it is running inside your mind right now. Here is what Jung actually meant, and here is why it should unsettle you. From the moment you were a child, you learned which parts of yourself were acceptable. You were praised for kindness, for patience, for keeping the peace, and you were punished, or ignored, or shamed for being angry, for being difficult, for wanting what you wanted. So you did what any intelligent creature does. You hid it, not just from others, from yourself. Jung called this the shadow, the repository of everything you decided you were not allowed to be. Rage, selfishness, envy, the desire to be seen, the willingness to say no. These did not disappear when you learned to smile and say, "I'm fine." They went underground, and underground they grew. This is the first thing you need to understand. The shadow is not what you chose. It is what you were forced to abandon to survive your own childhood. Now, the persona, because this is where the mechanism gets dangerous. Jung said the persona is the mask you wear for the world, the version of yourself you've decided is safe to show. For kind people, the persona is goodness itself, patient, giving, accommodating, never too much, never demanding. It feels like virtue. It is not always virtue. Sometimes it is armor. And the law of the persona is this: the more rigid the mask, the more the face beneath it warps. Think about someone you know who is almost pathologically nice. The person who never says no, who is always available, who apologizes when you bump into them. Now ask yourself, what happens to everything they are not allowed to feel? It goes into the shadow every time they swallow a grievance, every time they say, "It's fine," and it is not fine, every time they agree when they want to refuse. The shadow fills, slowly, quietly, over years. And then one day, something small happens. Someone cuts in line, a colleague takes credit, a friend cancels at the last minute. And the response that comes up is completely out of proportion, a fury that doesn't match the event. You feel it, and you are horrified by yourself, which only makes it worse. Jung called this a shadow eruption, the repressed contents of the unconscious breaking through the persona. And notice, it always hits the safest target. The person who can't fire you, the person who loves you regardless, the person least likely to abandon you. This is not a character flaw, it is a hydraulic system. Pressure that has nowhere to go will find the weakest seal. You are not a bad person for erupting. You are an overloaded system with a faulty release valve. But here is the part that is harder to sit with. Some of your kindness, not all of it, but some, is not kindness at all. It is fear. Fear of what happens if you say no, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as selfish, as difficult, as too much. Jung had a name for this too. He called it compulsive goodness, goodness driven not by love but by dread. It looks identical to genuine kindness from the outside, but from the inside it feels like obligation, like debt, like a tax you can never finish paying. And it breeds resentment, slow accumulating resentment, because you are giving what was never freely chosen. The shadow is fed every time you give from obligation and call it love. Now let's talk about what this costs you, because the cost is not just emotional, it is physical, it is relational, it is existential. The body keeps the score. Suppressed rage does not vanish, it metabolizes into something else. Chronic fatigue, headaches, autoimmune dysfunction, the body turning on itself when the mind won't allow the anger out. Depression, Jung argued, is often rage turned inward. The anger that has nowhere safe to go turns around and attacks the self. You are not broken. You are punishing yourself for feelings you were never given permission to have. Relationally, the cost is intimacy, because you cannot be fully known if part of you is permanently under lock and key. People who suppress their shadow become oddly opaque, likable but unreachable, warm but somehow not quite there. Their closest relationships are haunted by things never said, by needs never named, by the ghost of who they actually are. And existentially, the cost is identity, because when you have spent decades performing goodness, you lose track of who is underneath. You no longer know where the mask ends and the face begins. Jung called this a midlife crisis, not a cliché, but a genuine psychic emergency. The shadow ignored for 40 years finally demands to be reckoned with. It arrives as restlessness, as the sudden inability to keep pretending, as a rage that surfaces in the strangest places, as the feeling that your entire life has been lived for everyone except yourself. This is the shadow's ultimatum. It does not wait forever. Now, projection, because this is where the shadow gets socially dangerous, and it is happening around you constantly. When you refuse to face your own darkness, your unconscious mind outsources it. It puts your shadow on other people. The person who irritates you most, the selfish colleague, the demanding friend, the arrogant stranger, is almost always holding something you have disowned in yourself. The rage you feel at someone's selfishness, is it theirs? Or is it the rage of every time you were too good to ask for what you needed? The cruelty you despise in others, have you ever wondered if it is the cruelty you are terrified you are capable of? Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This is not comfortable, but it is one of the most useful things you will ever learn to do with your own reactions. Because the person who cannot see their own shadow is the most dangerous person in any room. Not because they are evil, because they are unconscious, and the unconscious acts without consent. The morally certain, the publicly virtuous, the person who has never had a cruel thought in their life. These are the people history has taught us to watch most carefully. The saint without a shadow is not enlightened. They are incomplete. Now, the part you actually need, not the diagnosis, the direction. Jung called the work shadow integration, not shadow elimination. Integration. You do not destroy what is in the dark. You bring it into relationship with the light. This is not about becoming angry in public. It is about becoming honest in private. Step 1. Name what you are actually feeling in private without editing it for palatability. Not, I feel a little frustrated. Not, I suppose I'm somewhat bothered. The actual word, the actual size of it. The shadow loses power the moment it is named. Not all of it, but some. Enough to work with. Step 2. Trace the resentment backward. Not forward to who you want to blame. Backward to the first time you buried what you are now carrying. Where did you first learn that your anger was unacceptable? Whose face taught you that lesson? That is not a reason to be angry at that person now. It is a reason to understand that the anger you carry was never yours to carry alone. Step 3. Distinguish between compulsive goodness and chosen goodness. This distinction will change your life. When you say yes, pause. Is this from warmth or from fear? You do not have to answer out loud, but you must answer honestly. Chosen kindness does not breed resentment. It actually replenishes you. Compulsive kindness hollows you out. And the people who love you, the ones worth keeping, will not leave because you started saying no. The ones who leave, who were they serving? You, or the version of you that never asked for anything? Step 4. Use your projections as a map. When you feel a disproportionate fury towards someone else's behavior, stop. Ask, what quality am I reacting to? Do I carry it? Do I fear I carry it? Or am I furious that they are getting away with something I never let myself do? That last one, sit with that one. Because the fury you feel at someone's selfishness might be the rage of every time you denied yourself what they are freely taking. Integration does not mean becoming selfish. It means becoming whole. It means the anger gets a seat at the table, not the head of the table. The philosopher Simone de Beauvoir wrote about the bad faith of the person who performs goodness as a substitute for freedom. The choice that is never chosen, the virtue that is never tested because the alternative was never considered. Jung would recognize it immediately, the persona mistaken for the self, the role mistaken for the life. What would happen if you stopped performing goodness for 1 week, not became cruel, simply stopped managing your reactions for others' comfort, and watched what emerged? Most people are terrified of that experiment. The terror itself is data. What are you afraid would come out? That is almost certainly what needs to come out. Not to be unleashed, to be examined, held, understood, given a controlled form rather than an explosive one. A person who has integrated their shadow is not someone who has conquered their darkness. They are someone who has stopped pretending it does not exist. They are more reliable, not less, because their behavior is no longer driven by forces they cannot see. They can say no and mean it. They can say yes and mean it. The difference is everything. Their kindness, when it comes, is real, because it is chosen, because there was an honest alternative and they still chose to give. That is worth something. That is worth more than a lifetime of obligatory niceness. Jung's final word on this was stark. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Not by being good, not by performing better, not by trying harder to suppress what you feel. By looking at it, by naming it, by holding it in awareness long enough that it stops running you from the dark. Your kindness is real, your goodness is real, but it will only ever be fully real when it is freely chosen, when the darkness in you has been seen, named, and given its honest place. Not some days, not in theory. Today, in the next small moment that asks you to perform a kindness you do not feel. Stop, pause, ask what is actually true, then choose. If this landed, the shadow work continues. Subscribe, and we will keep going deeper. The next video is already waiting for you in the dark.